Hello there, boys and girls. How are you tonight? Of course, I know this is going to come to you in the morning at 9:30, so you're going to be seeing Rita's Amazing Stories on Saturday morning, as you always do. Didn't you love that song Willie played? He just learned to play that in about 2 minutes, just so he could play that for me, because I wanted that as my theme song tonight. And you know what? Jesus does love the little children. I'm wondering where they're all at tonight. We've got a lot of sickness from the children, or a lot of the kids are sick that are usually on the program with me. But you know what? Maybe next week you can be on my program with me. All you got to do is come up here at 15 minutes till 6 every Friday night, and you can be on my program with me. Now, wouldn't you like that? That would be great, wouldn't it? Well, I'm looking forward to next Friday night, a whole bunch of you coming up here, sitting right here on this beautiful fur rug and listening to me read my amazing stories. And tonight I've got one that just kind of strikes home with me, and I love reading this because I've had so much experience with it. It's called Hated for Doing Good. Do you love what is good? Both of us would say that we do, wouldn't we? But do we really love it so much that we would do what is good even if others hated us for doing it? Well, it takes courage to do that, doesn't it? Do you think the great teacher that had that kind of courage, did he do good even when others hated him for it? Other people liked Jesus for the good things he did. Once all the people of a city gathered right at the door of a house where he was staying. They came because Jesus had been making sick people well. Well, that would make all the sick people come to see him, wouldn't it? But sometimes what Jesus taught showed that the people did not believe the truth. Did everyone like to hear him then? Were they willing to change their beliefs? Not everyone was. In fact, some of them showed real hate for Jesus because he spoke the truth. Well, you know, I have that problem myself. If I speak the truth, there's people who don't want to hear the truth. This happened one day in Jesus' own city of Nazareth. Jesus went into the synagogue. The synagogue is where the Jewish people meet. Jesus stood up and gave a fine talk from the scriptures. The people at first liked it. They were amazed at the beautiful words that came out of his mouth. Wouldn't you love to hear Jesus speak? I would just love to hear him speak. They could hardly believe that this was the young man who had grown up in their own city. But then Jesus said something else. He told about times when God showed special favors to people who were not Jews like them. When Jesus said this, those in the synagogues became angry. Do you know why they became angry? They thought they were the only ones to have God's special favor. Now, we know better than that, don't we? They thought that they were better than all other people. So they hated Jesus for what he said. And you know what they tried to do to him? The Bible says they grabbed Jesus and rushed him outside the city. They led him to the edge of a mountain and were going to throw him over the side and kill him. But Jesus got away from them. If that had happened to you, would you ever have gone back to talk to those people about God again? That would take courage, wouldn't it? Well, about a year later, Jesus did go back to Nazareth, and the Bible says he began to teach them in their synagogues. Jesus did not stop speaking the truth because fear of men who had no love for God. On another day, Jesus was in a place where there was a man whose hand was all withered up and crippled. Jesus had power from God to heal that man, but some men who were there were trying to make trouble for Jesus. What would the great teacher do? First, he showed what was the right thing to do. He asked, if you had a sheep that fell into a big hole on the Sabbath day, would you lift it out of the hole? Why, yes, they would do that for a sheep, even on the Sabbath. So Jesus said, is it even better to help a man on the Sabbath? Because a man is worth more than a sheep. How clear it was that Jesus should help this man by healing him. So Jesus told the man to stretch out his hand. Right away, it was made well like the other one. How happy that man was. But what about those other men? Were they glad? No, they hated Jesus even more. They went out and made plans to kill him. People are like that today. Some like what is right, others do not. No matter what we do, we can never please them. So we have to decide whom we really want to please. Whom do you want to please? Who do you want as your friends? Do you want good people for your friends? Do you want God to be your friend? Then you must always do what is right. But if you do good, will the devil like you? And really, do you want the devil to like you? There are people whom the devil likes. The Bible calls them the people of the world. The world is made up of all the people who are not followers of the great teacher. The great teacher said, if you were part of the world would be fond of what it is its own. Now, because you are no part of the world, but I have chosen you out of the world, and this account of the world hates you. Some people of the world say they believe in Jesus, but they do not teach others the truth about God as Jesus did. If you show them from the Bible that they are not teaching the truth, will they like that? No, most of them won't. But you may find someone like that man with the withered hand. He was grateful that Jesus did not hide the truth. There are many people who do hide the truth. They are afraid of what other people think. They are so worried about what other people may say that they hold back all their lives from doing what they know is right. What a shame. They miss out on so much happiness in life, and they miss out on the approval of God too. We don't want to be like that. Now, do we? And you know the reason I tell that story? Because everywhere I go, I have that problem. If I tell the truth, people don't like me for telling the truth. As a matter of fact, my own children sometimes get kind of upset with me when I am very honest and truthful with them. But I still try to tell the truth. Now I have a story, the next story I've chosen. Most of the time I pray about my stories, and God gives me a reason for telling these stories. It's probably because there's somebody out there needs to hear them. And I imagine this is one that there's some little boys and girls out there right now would like to hear. It's called He's Alive. Crucify him. Kill Jesus on a cross. The people of Jerusalem kept screaming. He claims to be the Son of God. Our law says he must die. Pilate, the Roman ruler, sadly nodded to his soldiers. He knew Jesus had done nothing wrong, but he did not want to make the people angry. The soldiers whipped Jesus with a leather strap tipped in metal. Blood poured down his back, but he never cried out. Next, the soldiers rammed a crown of thorns on his head. Hail, King of the Jews, they laughed. Finally, they ordered Jesus to pick up the heavy wooden cross and carry it out of the city. As Jesus staggered by, the people grew silent. Just 1 week ago, they had cheered this man. They had hoped he would be their new king and free Israel from the Roman rulers. Only a few people understood that Jesus came to be a different kind of king, the king of heaven and earth. On a day outside Jerusalem, soldiers nailed Jesus' feet and hands to the cross and raised it up. For hours, Jesus hung there, suffering in the hot sun. If you are God's son, save yourself, someone in the crowd kept teasing. Jesus looked to the sky. Father, he groaned, forgive them. They know not what they are doing. By late afternoon, black clouds had gathered and thunder rumbled. Jesus suddenly cried out in a loud voice, "It is finished." Father, I give you my spirit. The earth shook and darkness filled the sky. Jesus was dead. 3 days later, some women who had loved Jesus went to his tomb to wash his body and wrap it in grave clothes. There had been no time to do this on the day he died. "What will we do?" one woman asked the other. "We have forgotten about the heavy stone over the door of the tomb. We cannot move this by ourselves." "Perhaps the guards posted there will help us," answered her friend. But when the woman reached the tomb, they were amazed. The guards were gone, and the stone had been rolled away. Jesus' tomb was open, and a bright light shone all around. "Oh, sisters, someone has stolen Jesus' body. How could anyone do such a terrible thing?" cried out one of the women. Suddenly a voice spoke out of the bright light. "Are you looking for Jesus? He is not here. He has risen from the dead, just as he promised. Go and tell all the others." That night, the disciples gathered in a secret room. They were afraid the elders would punish them for following Jesus. The women had told them that morning about finding the empty tomb, but the men did not believe their story. One disciple said, "I will not believe Jesus is alive until I can touch the nail holes in his hands." You know, there's people like that today. They won't believe when it's right in front of their face. Then standing there before them was Jesus. "Peace be with you. I am alive. Touch me and believe." They had to touch him to believe, didn't they? The men looked at one another and then back to Jesus. He was alive. Jesus had come back to life just as he said he would. They laughed and they cried and they hugged and they laughed even some more. He was alive. Jesus and his followers talked long into the night. The disciples had many questions for their Lord, and he opened their minds so they could understand God's plan. "I had to die for the sins of the world," Jesus said. "Now I go to be with the Father, but I leave you with a task and a promise. Go tell people everywhere what I have taught you. And my Spirit will be with you always, even until the end of the world." That's what I hope is going to be for me, even till the end of the world, because I know he is alive. Now my next story, I just thought was just be a nice story for Valentine's Day, because we think of love and we think of beautiful things at Valentine's Day. And this is a story about the fairest creature of creation. I bet you can guess who that is. When I saw her picture, I just realized how beautiful she was. As Adam watched the animals bashing in the warm sunshine or playing happily in the meadows, he soon noticed that they were in pairs. Every animal had a mate. You know, there's a lot of people out there today think everyone should have a mate, but sometimes it's not always possible, is it? Alongside the majestic lion stroked a sleek and slender lioness. Behind the antler stag moved a graceful deer. With the powerful bull was a gentle cow. Near the tiger was a tigress. Close by the bear was a she-bear. Not far behind Mr. Rabbit was Mrs. Rabbit. And so it was with the giraffe and the zebras and the rhinos and the antelopes and the opossums and the squirrels. Only Adam was alone. Truly the animals were so friendly to him as they could be. When he called on them, they stopped and looked at him with their great big wandering eyes, but they couldn't say a single word in return. The little dog seemed to understand him best, but it was clear that he wanted to speak even so badly. But all he could do was waggle his tail and jump about and bark. Many times Adam must have wondered why there was no mate for him. Perhaps he began to search for one. Perhaps out of the aching of his heart, he called and called, hoping that someone like himself might hear his voice and answer him. Perhaps he hath expected to see some beautiful creature come gliding through the forest toward him to be his special friend and companion. but no one came. As he lay upon the grass thinking of these things, his sense of loneliness increased. The earth was very beautiful, the animals so friendly and amusing, but there was nobody for him to talk to, nobody with whom he could share his thoughts, nobody, that is, except God. Suddenly Adam began to feel very sleepy. This was strange, he thought. He had never felt like this before. What would be happening to him? He tried to keep awake, but it was no use. Moment by moment, he became sleepier and sleepier, until at last he had kept his eyes open no longer. The earth, the flowers, the trees, the animals, all faded away and were forgotten as he fell into a deep slumber. Now God drew near to him again, as near as he had been a little while before, when he had breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. With one swift touch of his gentle, creative hands, he removed a rib from the sleeping form before him, closing up the wound with an infinite skill. And the rib which the Lord God had taken from the man, he made a woman. What a strange thing for God to do. If he could make the sun, the moon, and the stars by saying, "Let there be light," in the firmament of the heavens, if he could make all the animals by saying, "Let the earth bring forth the living creatures after this his kind," why did he not say, "Let there be a woman"? And why, after making Adam the most marvelous creature in his wonderful new world, did he take a rib from his perfect body to make his life companion? There must have been a good reason for God acting thus, and I like to think it was because he wanted Adam to know that his wife was truly a part of him, and so that he would ever treat her as he would himself. The Bible tells us that God made Eve to be as helpmate for him, for which our word helpmate has come. And what a lovely thought that is. She was to stand by his side always, helping him, working with him, planning with him, and sharing life's joy with him. That's what God planned on our wives to be. But let us watch God at work again. Of Adam's rib, we are told, he built a woman. Even as he had formed man of the dust of the ground, so now, with infinite wisdom and skill, he fashioned the one who was to become the mother of the whole human race. How perfect he molded the features of her lovely face. How gracefully he arranged her long, flowing hair. With what loving thought he placed within her mind and heart all the tenderness, all the gentleness, all the sweetness, all the endless store of love he wanted every mother to have. In less time than it takes to tell, there stood before him the fairest creature of all creatures, her eyes sparkling with the joy of life, a tender smile giving her pretty face a beautiful beyond compare. And now, slowly and gracefully, he takes her first few steps as God brings her unto the man. Wonderful, she looks down at the sleeping figure before her. Who was this? Who can this be? Dreaming perhaps of the companion he hoped to meet someday, somewhere in this wonderful world God has given him, Adam stirs and opens his eyes. Oh, wonder of wonders! There before him stands someone more beautiful than he had dared to hope for. A being of choice, so noble, so altogether lovely, that he can scarcely believe that she is real. Looking into her bright, kindly, understanding eyes, he knew at once that this is his mate, the dear companion for whom he had been longing. And Adam said, "This is now bones of my bones, and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man." It is love at first sight. Instantly both seemed to know that they belonged to each other. Eagerly they linked hands and walked away together. As king and queen of the glorious new world, they wandered through the flower-filled fields, over the tree-studded hills, down by the wave-swept shore, exploring the wonders of God's creation and marveling at the glory of his power. Meanwhile, not far away, silently watching over them in tender love and smiling at their perfect happiness, is God himself, his joy completed in theirs. Now I'd like to show you a picture of this beautiful creature that God created for man. She is so beautiful. Take a look at this picture. Can you see that? She is so beautiful. Yes, that looks good on camera. Yeah, zoom in on it for me. I just think that is the most beautiful face I've ever seen. There you go. That is what Eve looked like when Adam woke up and saw his lifetime mate, his wife. Someone to keep him happy, to make him comfortable, and to be his helpmate. And remember all the things that explained how she was? So sweet and tender and loving and kind. And that's what God tells us he wants our wives to be, and that's what he wants our mothers to be. That's what's expected of us. Isn't that a beautiful picture? Okay. How much time have I got left, you know? About 5 minutes? Okay. Very good. Very good. Okay. One more little short one here I want to read to you. It's called Weekday Christians. You know, I know a lot of them. I just know a lot of weekday Christians. When I read you the story, you're going to know what I'm talking about. A young man was being interviewed by a position in a small business firm. He had a neat appearance and made a good impression on the owner. He had also prepared an excellent resume in which he listed his pastor, his Sunday school teacher, and a church deacon as his references. The owner of the business studied the resume for several minutes. Then he said, I want you to listen to what he said after reading this resume. "I appreciate these recommendations from your church friends, but what I would really like to hear from someone who knows you on weekdays." Well, why would that be any different? Well, sorry to say, there is a sharp contrast between the way some Christians act in church and how they behave in the world. The principles they possess on Sunday should be practiced every day. Now he's talking about you and me. What we do on Sunday and the way we behave in church, that's the way we should behave every day, at every minute of our day. Daniel was an ideal model in his relationship with both God and man. He did not live by a double standard. His daily conduct was consistent with his spiritual values. His enemies tried to find some charges against him, but no fault could be found. His walk in the world was in harmony with his walk with God. Would your church friends be shocked if they observed our actions and heard our speech at our jobs or in our homes? A good Sunday Christian will also be a good weekday Christian. So be careful what you do through the week, what you say, and your actions. If you're not behaving and living the same way you do on Sunday in church, then you're not doing God's will. And that's what we're trying to get you to understand. Consistency, how much we need to walk a measured pace, to live the life of which we speak until we see Christ's face. So let's remember not to be a weekday Christian, but to be a Christian every day. I'm going to close with a little poem, and it's called A Prayer for Our Children. You know, this prayer is for my children, the same as yours. And for all you boys and girls out there that's listening, this is a prayer for you. Lord, please bless my children. Protect them day and night. Lead them down the right road, forever in thy sight. Let them know thy presence each step along the way. Give strength and courage to sustain them, come what may. Be their consolation in times of woe and strife. Guide them past the pitfalls on their journey through this life. And when this life is over, see them safely to that shore where peace and love are boundless beyond heaven's golden door. You know, I pray for all you boys and girls out there, because that is where my heart is to help the boys and girls to know Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. Now, as we sign off tonight, I want to remind you that I still need a name for my doggie, my little Dalmatian here. He doesn't have a name, and I need you boys and girls to write your name, your address, your telephone number, and your age on a piece of paper and send it to me. Or if you're in my Awanas class or in my Awanas group at church, bring the name to church with you. But bring me a name for my doggie. Until next week, good night. My legs are just shaking, shaking, shaking.